Welcome back. We are here with the director and our special guest of Searchers, Pacho and Marion. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I'm curious, we've got a couple of things I'd like to talk about, but one of the first things is I'm curious how you, of course, found your searchers, the people that were participants in your film, besides Marion, because Marion, we will get to you in a moment.
Yeah,
but Pacho, talk to me about that.
How did you find me? I know. I needed his help. I needed help, so we had to make a deal.
Yeah.
We can get to the deal.
We'll get to the deal later.
Yeah, so my day job is teaching at the New School in New York City. It's a university right sort of in the heart of Manhattan. And so a lot of the outreach was through the school and through former students, alumni, fellow professors, just reaching out to try to get a sort of diverse, interesting kind of series of voices, people who like really felt like they represented as many aspects of the city as possible. I also had some very long-suffering students, student workers who were helping me by going on the apps and just inviting people to be part of the film.
Did it affect their grade?
They weren't enrolled in my classes.
Oh, you had to
when
wait
they were
till,
doing the work. They were research assistants,
okay.
So they were getting like
their dating experience.
No, it was like work study is
All
how
right.
it worked. So they were, yeah, so they were on the apps. I had one particular recent grad, Milo. I always have to give Milo a little shout out, who was on Match.com, and he listed himself as a 75-year-old. He was sort of making matches, and people would see his photo. He used his real photo, and people would ask him, like, is that you 50 years ago? Because he sort of had like a retro haircut. And he would be like, why, no, that is not. I am in fact 23 years old, and I'm working on this film. Are you interested in being a part of it? We were always upfront about that. We were never duplicitous about what we were up to. Another thing that was really important to us was finding people who were really searching, who were genuinely looking for a connection. That was important to the film. And then the other part of it was like people who really were like bursting to talk. And that's important to me in general when doing interview films. Like I never want to feel like I'm pulling or extracting things from someone who isn't excited to share with us. And so before filming with people, we'd often find a moment to connect on the phone or go get a coffee in real life, and just like be certain that this is somebody who really like is like ready to speak their piece, is really excited to sort of let loose with their experience.
That's what I was going to ask you, is if you felt or thought that people were really kind of being honest with their vulnerability, that up front, or how you may have warmed up to them. Because I think that being upfront about what you were making is one thing, and then kind of once you're on the set, or having those conversations with the camera, and it kind of makes it a little bit, you want it to be intimate, but of a conversation. How was that? Did they warm up, or was it like a quick kind of honesty?
Oh, well, it totally depended on the person. We ended up doing, I think, about 75 or 80 of these shoots. I think there's maybe like 30, 35 in the film. And so there definitely was a sort of selection process. And the things I was looking for were honesty and a sort of like unique take, unique experience. So when Helene starts telling us, Helene and a friend are talking about how all the older men are looking for the younger women, I was like, all right, I've heard this before. But then Helene's like, I'm the same. I want the younger men. I was like, okay, that's in the movie. That's
true, right?
That's a wonderful sort of twist to your expectations.
Yeah. And was it difficult, do you feel like, to find, like, were you overflowing with that truth, that honesty? Was it hard to narrow it down after?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways this movie could have gone on forever, and like I kind of actually would love to do that. So if anyone's ever interested in sort of funding a doc series about online dating around America, like sign me up. But yeah, it's sort of endlessly interesting. People are totally fascinating. I was reading this thing about human evolution, right? And like the evolution of consciousness. And this is getting like a little abstract, but bear with me. And it was talking about like basically like why do humans have consciousness? What is this about? And it was talking about how like a lot of it was actually so that people, because the thing that people do is they want to like either like cooperate or compete with one another. And so like the human brain really formed in order to see someone else in front of us and be able to like think about what they're thinking, what they're feeling, be able to like read them. And this sort of this like moment of back and forth is for me like hopefully what the film's getting at, this sort of this like reflexivity where you're like you're seeing this face, you're the audience, and you're seeing this face on the screen, and you're able to sort of imagine yourself into this other person's brain and sort of go on this sort of journey with them through their set of experiences in a way that, yeah, is I mean, for me, it's just like endlessly fascinating. I could do it all day.
Yeah, well, it's like you have my notes, but I wanted to talk about the approach that you take in the film, which is, you know, how you chose to have everyone looking into the lens and you controlling the app, because I think that's an interesting choice as a filmmaker. And then, you know, was that always the intention, or did that kind of come out of other interviews where you're like, oh, maybe I should pull this element back and let that, you know, control this part versus them dictating the conversation. And just what I also find interesting too is that kind of idea that we're judging them while they are judging someone else, like this, the hall of mirrors, I think is what you've mentioned in the past.
Yeah. Hopefully the film feels a little bit like being on a dating app, right? And I mean, I think, yeah, it's sort of as the audience, you're also making judgments about these people as they're making judgments about the people they're looking at. And just how that's kind of like a built-in aspect of when you see somebody, you are judging them. You're always judging them a little bit. And that's just like, you know, it's not to say that that's necessarily a bad thing. It's just fundamental. It's like you have this encounter with somebody and we're all, you know, we're all trying to connect in some way and trying to understand or trying to compete or trying to cooperate, whatever it is, like that moment. But getting back to your question, the setup with the app, as you sort of everyone's looking into the screen through their phone, that was there from the very start of the film, and that was really kind of the initial impetus for making the movie, like finding that point of view. And a lot of it has to do, for me, also with how much people are on their phones these days and just on screens. Right, we're like looking at a screen of one sort or another
all the time, walking down the street, you know, it's like everyone's like, yes,
yeah,
for
all
sure,
the time,
for sure, yes, all the time.
And so there's something about that like gaze that's like fundamental to contemporary life. Like that's what we're doing with our time. We're staring at screens. And what is the reverse shot of that angle? Like what is the, you know, what is the screen looking back at us? What's that point of view? And so that was exciting to me when we found that. And I was like, oh, I think I can sort of make a movie around this idea, and it says something about modern life and, you know, our sort of absorption or fascination with devices and apps and, you know, programs and email and social media and all this stuff that at the end of the day is about like the magnetism of the screen. And that's something I think
no, go ahead.
This is something I think you see like in some of the people who are browsing too, that, and I found when we were shooting with them, is that at first they're very aware of us. It's maybe like a little bit awkward in the room, but once they get into the app and they're really in the sort of the flow of swiping left and right, it's absolutely hypnotic. It's mesmerizing, and people just go to this other kind of state. It feels like a sort of hypnotized state where they're like totally absorbed in the screen.
Yeah. It's like you're watching the dopamine hits, like
Yeah.
in real time, right? One of the, I mean, there's a lot of great kind of little moments from your searchers, but one I want to talk about, which I think brings in Marion a little bit, but the scene with Mark, I believe is his name, and the interaction with his mother coming into the room while he's with the camera crew, and that's a very, very vulnerable moment. Was that, how early into the process was that, and did that influence, obviously, like bringing in Marion, your mother, into the film?
Is that what made you decide?
Yeah. I mean, it
That was interesting. No, I thought, actually, I felt badly for the young man when that happened, because, you know, that to say that, you know, she said, you know, oh, I was only in labor 12. I mean, it's almost like it's almost like a comic routine. But then I thought about it and I thought, well, I was in labor for 12 hours too. Maybe I should use that sometime. So I went from like the sympathy to like seeing sort of the humor in it, and the fact that the young man was, you know, this is his life. He was showing you some really part of his life. This is his life, you know. But I have to say, I did think about how many hours it was.
My mom was filling her arsenal.
You know, I have to say about, you know, Pacho, from the time he was a very young filmmaker, or when he was a new filmmaker, he always had a way of getting people to talk to him, making them comfortable, genuinely, not kind of like manipulating them or whatever. I mean, I think that's a particular talent of my son, that in his films, from the early films, even you can see his doing that. Yes, his ability to do that.
So Pacho, when did you ask her to participate in the process?
It was last summer, so summer 2020. It was probably like July or August. And we'd already filmed with Mark, and we had that moment with Mark, and it is extremely sort of vulnerable. And for me to sort of feel comfortable with it, I was like, well, you know, I'm asking Mark to put his mom in the film. Am I willing to go there as well? Am I willing to be that vulnerable and put my own mom in my film? Then I said, sure, like, let's do it. And then
I needed someone to drive me to Cleveland to meet my younger son so I could get to Wisconsin. So it was this deal that I would be in the film, and then Pacho would drive me to Cleveland, and then they would meet me. But the other thing was, I wasn't sure whether they wanted to interview me about my experience on line day, and I wasn't sure how I felt about that. So anyway, it wasn't quite clear what his purpose was. So I asked for, he told me I could have final cut approval.
And you approve, I guess.
I did, yes. It was all about him.
And Marion, are you matchmaking while you're on the festival circuit with him?
Not right. No. It's difficult. It's all difficult. No matter how you do it, it's difficult. Whether it's, you know, somebody you know at work, or activities, or on the app, it's not easy stuff. And I think New York is known to be much, much harder.
Yeah.
Much, much harder.
So I think, Pacho, you're gonna have Marion in your later films as well, I hope.
Is
any indication?
Cameos, right?
She needs a few more road trips. There's a deal to be made there. Well, I also want to talk about, so the fact that, you know, there is, what I think is very interesting about the film is that it is, you know, during this pandemic, and the summer of New York and the pandemic, after this major surge, and you kind of see people out and about, but in a very different, probably, way. I think, you know, there's masks, there's some distance, there's, you know, others not. But I also think that it's this moment in time that you capture that's really interesting, where you're getting all of these thoughts and reflections when people, you know, in this time have been kind of quarantined and reflecting a lot on their life and their choices. And I want to say, you know, I think it's a really romantic and hopeful film that you know, I really appreciate you kind of showing that of New York, that I think a lot of people have this kind of romantic, nostalgic feeling for New York, but in a time that has been very difficult. I think people can connect with it. Did you expect to make, like, was it always that kind of, like, did you think it would be this romantic? Like, did you think it would be this hopeful? I don't know.
Well, one of my friends described it as like a vision of hell. So not everyone shares your optimism.
Okay.
But
that's totally fair. I can see that
too. But I mean, I did always, what I knew that I wanted to do was I wanted audiences to walk away feeling warm about the characters, even if you sort of like hate the, it's like one of those, like, what is it, like, don't hate the player, hate the game.
Yeah.
Like that kind of attitude, right? Like, these people are wonderful, and I'm so thankful that they were willing to share their lives with me in this very intimate, personal way. And so it's, hopefully you can sort of separate out that from like whatever you think about the dating app itself. And I have a lot of sort of mixed feelings about the dating apps. On some level, I think it commercializes or like turns dating into a kind of like another market activity, just another way that like capitalism is like taking everything from us. But also, like, from talking with a lot of the sort of the queer youth, the trans youth in the film, for them, it's a really good, like, relatively safe way to connect with people, and it really has opened up their social worlds in important ways. And so that was something that I wasn't anticipating going into the film, and that I learned from talking to them. And it points to something else, which I think hopefully the film is doing, which is we live in this sort of very strange moment for like being a straight white male director, and that's what I am, middle-aged, all these things. Yeah. And just thinking about ways that like it's possible to make films from that position, because that's just who I am, and I don't know how to step out of that. But also making films from that position that are more about receptivity and about listening, and maybe, like, dare I say, like, making space, but really listening to other people's experiences and sort of absorbing them, and sharing them. And so that's hopefully something that I was trying to do in some small way inside of this film, as a way of maybe responding to some of the sort of social and political currents in the world at this time.
Yeah. Was there any one searcher, I keep calling them searchers, but I have a couple of favorites. I love Kathleen, and she mentions, like, she basically is like, when they say intimacy, they want sex. Like, like, there's like these little nuggets of people like really coming out of their own. But is there any one particular scene or moment when someone reveals something that surprised you, like where you were really completely caught off guard by what they, by the interview? I don't know.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, for me, the most powerful moment is when John says that when he was with that man, he felt beautiful.
Yeah.
And just that the choice of that word is, it like floors me every time. And being there in the room with it, we were like, oh, like this is special. This is in the film. And it's not part of the movie, but that scene with John actually has gained like an added poignancy, because he ended up passing away from a heart attack a week before the film was accepted to Sundance. So he hasn't seen the final film. He doesn't know that it's out in the world. I mean, he's passed away. So we didn't have a chance to tell him about the film. Yeah, and it's extremely sad to not share, this journey with him. So
wow, I don't know how to end it. This is like, I was totally no, that is a completely heartbreaking note. I wonder if his former boyfriend will see this, or do you know if if he has, or if he'll be able to. 'Cause
So
that's such a
Marlo
beautiful
figured out who he was through like a little bit of Facebook stalking. Milo's
That was your
yeah,
clutch.
diligent student, former student. But we haven't reached out yet, and that's something that I think that we will do at some point in the coming weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, he felt loved, right? He had an opportunity in his life near the end to say that he had felt loved. I mean, not many people, not everyone can say that, or beautiful, that he felt beautiful.
Yeah. It's remarkable. What a lovely, sorry, I'm just like completely floored by this moment. I don't know what else to say. I am really touched by the film. I think it's a beautiful film amongst many of your amazing works. And Marion, I am so thankful that you have been able to join us today.
Well, thanks for inviting me. Yes.
Do you have any, you want to leave us with any final thoughts about your son's work?
Pacho's always, his films have always been, he has an idea. Now, he may argue with it. He has an idea, he runs with it, but he doesn't necessarily know ahead of time what it's going to be. He does the filming, and then when it's all together, he has an idea more, it's clearer it's not like he's trying to prove a point. It's like he's taking these film, and he's thinking about it, and he's moving it along, and then it is what it is at the end. But it wasn't necessarily a plan that way, to do it that way from the beginning. It really is what is brought to him that he puts together. Did I say that? Okay. Well,
yeah. Well, thank you both for being here. Congratulations again on the film.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you to
thank
AFI.
you. Good
It's
luck.
always a pleasure.
Good luck with
you.
with your festival. Good luck.
Thanks everybody at home for watching. Please find us at our website, docs.afi.com, for more opportunities to engage with the festival and our filmmakers and each other. And we'd love to hear from you as well on social media, #AFIDOCS. Thanks, and we'll see you again.
And please feel free to reach out at Pacho Works on Instagram. It's probably the easiest way.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.